Hello everyone and welcome to CRAMSURG, Clinical Research Appraisal and Methodology for Surgical Trainees, where we pick a paper fresh from the press on a hot general surgical topic. We review it for you, we present it for you, we critique its methodology for you, and provide top-of-the-field expert opinions and teaching on research appraisal and methodology. My name is Gio Perrin, and together with Professor Sababala Subramanian, Adam Haig, Ben Wood and Josh Lau, we bring you CRAMSURG from the wonderful region of the Yorkshire and the Humber. Welcome again. Today we have a special session with our guest speaker, Professor Danny Rosin from Tel Aviv. We'll start as usual with discussing a paper. This will be laparoscopic versus open liver resection for hepatocellular carcinoma, a case control study with propensity score matching, which was published in the World Journal of Surgery very recently. As mentioned, after that, Prof. Rosin will talk about the editorial process for surgeons, particularly as it applies to the World Journal of Surgery, as he's an associate editor there. I'll leave you to it then.
Firstly, I'm hugely grateful for Professor Rosin to agree to come and talk to us. We're just a small group. He's a very busy man, so I'm extremely delighted and honored to have him here. So Professor Rosin is an associate editor of the World Journal of Surgery, as you have heard. He is head of ambulatory surgery and deputy head of surgery and transplantation in Tel Aviv, where he's an associate professor, and then he's trained in Israel and the US. Now, I've never met him in flesh, although I see him now, but I have known him from his writings on a group called Surginet for many years now. And I know that he's a very talented surgeon from the videos that he has posted. And from his writings, everyone on Surginet would agree that he's a very wise and thoughtful man. And at the same time, he has an amazing sense of humor. So that's the short introduction. And again, thanks, Danny. I know it's well beyond 10 o'clock for you. Really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you very much. And it's really flattering. And I'll just share my screen. Let me see if it works. Okay, so we'll be talking a little bit about what happens in the journal that I work for, but I think it's quite common in most of the journals, most of the leading journals, the way the things go behind the scenes, and how I think it's important for those who write papers or intend to write papers to know what's the process actually, and sometimes they ask themselves, why does it take so long? There are many things that go behind the scenes. So first of all, a few words about who's actually doing this work of peer review. And in the journal, we have the reviewers, which are usually experts in the field, and the papers are sent to them according to their expertise. And there's an editorial board, and the editorial board actually is comprised of reviewers, but those that do it for quite a long time and dedicated and prove that they are worthwhile. And basically, to be an editorial board member is an honor, but you tend to do the same, maybe more of the same, and review papers. And then we have the associate editors, which actually, on another level, they review the papers, but they don't really go into the details. They send out the papers for review to the reviewers, and eventually they get the reviews and send their recommendation to the editor-in-chief, which is the actual decider of what will be the fate of the journal, of the manuscript. But we have to remember that we have the editorial manager, which actually takes care of everything. So she's the one that do the hard work of allocating the papers and following up and handling all the computerized work that we have to do. Everything is now, of course, online. So if we talk a little bit about peer review and why is it important, what is the process of peer reviewing, it's very important because this is actually a way to improve the quality of the papers because it goes through surgeons, in our case, or doctors that are proficient and well experienced in this specific field of the published paper, of the intended to publish paper, and they know the literature, so they can suggest more references. And sometimes, surgeons try to. It's very common to claim that this is the first case of or first study or the only study in the world, and many times it's not really the truth. And the reviewers can actually point the authors that to other relevant references and acknowledge them. And they also can assess what's the importance of the findings. Sometimes findings are statistically significant, but they have no real clinical effect or importance. So this is one of the important ways to judge a manuscript. And of course, we want to avoid plagiarism and fraud, and this is done, we'll talk about it in the end, but this is done now mainly in some computer programs that can actually scan huge number of papers and compare them and alert us to risk of plagiarism. And this is also, it's not only for the writers, being a reviewers actually pays in a way in your academic development. First of all, you get to get exposed to many manuscripts. Sometimes it's really interesting to see what people are doing around the world. And also there's some honor in being a reviewer. So the principles basically that without peer review, there's no really control on what is being published, and scientific communication is not really well controlled in a way that you cannot really trust the results. So peer review is a process that intends to put some kinds of control. We know that it's much easier to immediately publish in Facebook at the same time than at the same day, or same hour, or same minute, than waiting sometimes a few months until your work is published. But of course, the quality is much different. So we want to keep the scientific quality of these papers as high as we can. Of course, there are many journals, many low-level journals that will accept everything, and some of them you have to pay, and by paying you actually get to be published. But in the higher level journals, this is quite controlled and really rely on good peer review process. So how do we do the peer review? First of all, we get a first impression. We look at the paper and see whether it's original, whether there's some importance to the field that the manuscript deals with. And we look at the structure, we look at the language. Some of these manuscripts are being sent back just because they don't look well. The language is not really appropriate, and that's maybe a bias because most of the journals that we deal with, we read, are English-based, and there's some advantage, of course, for English-speaking surgeons or writers, but we get a lot of papers that come from other places where English is not the first language, and sometimes they're being rejected or at least returned for revision because the language is not enough to be published. Then we go on to look at the abstract. whether it really summarizes the message or the study or the work that was done. Does it give us the key findings? Does it conform to the length that is appropriate for a summary? We go on to the introduction and look whether it's clear enough to really introduce the topic and why actually the study was done, what was done before, what's the aim, what we try to achieve in the current paper or current study. And then the reviewer can suggest some changes and reorganization. We expect the reviewer to be specific to actually help or assist the authors in repairing or correcting the work, and not really be critical, but be with constructive criticism. We go on to the methodology, and first of all, we have to make sure that what was done can be really repeated and with similar outcome, because we want to make sure that the methodology is really effective one and correct one. We have to look whether the author's reference to previous published methodology, because many times methodologies repeat themselves, and we just mentioned this was done in that way or this way, but it has to be well referenced. If it's a new methodology, it has to be accurately described, and sometimes some supplementary material should be added, which will not be included in the main article, but will be available sometimes online, because sometimes it's too complicated or too long to be included in the main article, but it has to be there somewhere, because if you want to do a real critical review, you have to know these details. One of the ways that we judge or examine articles, if we look, for example, at systematic reviews or meta-analysis, it's the PRISMA method. And we also saw that before when we describe patients, we start with a large number. And if we talk about systematic review, we start with a large number of articles. But many times, many are excluded for this or that reason. And in some cases, the article looks appropriate, but you cannot really retrieve it. And many times patients are excluded. So eventually, many times you see that you start with a very large number, and the actual manuscript describes very few, if it's meta-analysis, very few articles. So if you start with 100 articles, but eventually you describe only 2 or 3, you didn't do much. So this will take away all this advantage of meta-analysis. This is the same, and it's good to see that in this kind of diagram, that you can actually graphically see what you're dealing with. It's much easier to review an article when you have the studies in front, the numbers in front of you. It's also true for large, assumably large studies. When you start with large number of patients, and eventually you get very small numbers, so all the essence of the study is actually lost. It's quite common to see that we have removed 10,000 gallbladders since 1962, and eventually we end up with a group of 5 patients with unique anatomy. So it doesn't really matter how much you did. We wanted to see the actual number. The actual number is 5, it's not 10,000. So all this study, as much as you show off, it doesn't mean anything. So these kind of graphs are really helpful. We really like to see them, that really give you a graphical view of how did the work was done. Then we go to the results and the discussion, and the reviewer should suggest improvement, because the main reason to do a peer review is not not to attack the author, but actually to help him to get to do a better job and get a better paper done. And many times this revision, sometimes more than one revision, really brings out a better paper to the journal. So it's really an important task, and you have to comment on the logic and the justification of your conclusions, and you have to comment on specifics like the figures, the tables. You really have to go into the details of the article in order to create a good review, and then you have to phrase it in a way that will really help the author to improve the paper, or in a way that will really describe why this paper is not really appropriate for publication in this specific, at least in this specific journal. You may suggest further work, additional experiment, going back to the raw data and reanalyze it. So there are many changes that you can suggest in order to get the article to being to get accepted. And with some authors will just say, okay, this is too much for us. We'll just go to another journal which will accept it. And many times you can find another journal, but many authors really are keen to get their work published and do this revision and go back to the data and reanalyze it, rephrase it, rewrite it, and actually come up with a better article, better paper. Then we have the conclusion, which has to be a really short comment on why the study was done and what's the difference that it makes, and why is it important to publish it. First, it's actually the essence of the article. It's not a real summary. The summary is actually in the abstract, not in the conclusion. But this is like few sentences that give us the gist of the article itself, and what are the results, what are the implications, and why is it important to publish it, and what will maybe affect the practice of other surgeons. Then again, we have to go into the details of the references and the tables and figures and check the accuracy and comment on them and see that everything fits. Because there's a tendency to browse through the references and just have a look at them many times. It really makes a difference if you have good references. Sometimes authors just collect a lot of references that are not really related to the topic, just to get a nice list. So we have to go over that as well. So what makes a good reviewer? The review should be comprehensive, really helpful. So of course we expect everything to be on time. There's limited time. We don't want to the author to wait too much. Usually within a few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, that's the allocated time for the reviewer. We expect well-founded comments and, as I said, constructive criticism, be objective, and we expect the reviewer to give a clear recommendation to us or to the chief editor. What should we actually do with this paper? So if you look at the process that this manuscript go through from submission, so first there's some pre-check and we send it for a peer review, and then we can get a recommendation whether to accept it. If it's really exceptional, really accepted immediately, but many times we send out the papers for revision. Can be minor revision for a few details or language editing or things that are not really essential to the topic, but to the format of the paper. And many times we actually ask for a major revision, but these revisions, I can tell you a secret, most of the revisions eventually end up with acceptance. If you get you get the paper back asking you to revise it, you can actually be happy that most probably you revise it and everything will go well. Maybe you revise it once more, but eventually will get accepted. Some of the rejections are immediate. We don't really even send her to peer review because it's obvious that this is below the level of the journal. But most of the papers will get a professional peer review. After the acceptance, of course, there's still a process of preparing the paper for publication, the proofreading, and all this preparation of that leads to the publication itself. The revisions, sometimes we have to re-review papers that were sent for revision, came back, and then we send them again to the same reviewers that already saw the paper and reviewed it initially to see whether the replies of the authors or the corrections that were made are really appropriate and according to what they suggested. And if everything fits, then we make a recommendation sending to the authors that we decide to publish it. One more thing that I want to mention is the detection of plagiarism. I mentioned that before. This is done mainly electronically now. There are many ways to do it. Every journal uses a different format, but there are online ways to actually compare what was sent as a written text to multitude of other papers that are in the database. So eventually you get a percentage of how much similar this article is to other articles. And it's very easy. You see, you get a nice report with percentages and colors, and it's very easy to say to the author, okay, here you percentages above 35% of concordance with other articles, or maybe your own articles in the past. So you have to either reject it or revise it. Unfortunately, it's quite common to see that. And that's why we need these modalities of electronic detection. This goes almost automatically through the editorial manager. It's not actually the work of the peer reviewer himself, but actually done by the editorial manager. And this is, as I said, unfortunately, we see it more and more today, the pressure to create papers, to publish. It has financial implications. It's an honor. You get promoted, and people are doing things that we really don't like them to do. And there are many ways to detect them and catch it. But eventually, some of them are being published and eventually retracted because they found it only later. But this is actually being done for every paper before publication. So this is the workflow of manuscript that get accepted, and then we go through the process of checking for citation, for the references, and also there's an ombuds person that reviews to ensure that there's no racial or cultural or other biases that should not be published. And we check everything should pass, and then Sometimes we invite, if it's really interesting topic that needs some other comments, we send, we ask for invited commentary on articles that seems to be more leading the topic, or maybe have a way to change really change the practice of surgeons. Then many times we ask for a commentary. It's like an editorial about the same topic, referring to the article itself and the topic in general. So that's, in few words, that's the process that the manuscripts, submitted manuscript to go through. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to reply.
Thank you very much, Danny. That's very interesting as a really good overview of the process. I think some of our listeners might be a little bit shy or hesitant to ask questions, but I'll kick off. I'll ask a couple of questions. There's a question from Ahmed. Hello, Ahmed. Ahmed is from the US. He asks, what do you think about the overall quality of submitted manuscripts now versus, let's say, 20 years ago?
It's really difficult to say, because the process is much more complicated, and the threshold for acceptance, at least in the leading journals, is much higher. But what we see around is that there are many journals that have the lower threshold, and then eventually what you get to see in print, the amount of papers that are being published every year is huge. So you can see everything. There are many very low level, low quality articles that get published and eventually get cited also. So, once it's published, you cannot, it's very rare for a paper to be retracted or erased for maybe to just being ignored, but many low level articles are being published all the time. So I cannot really, the spectrum is very wide, but we try to, at least in the leading journals, we try to make the process of the selection process, the peer review process, professional. And this is many times sometimes annoying for the authors, because sometimes they have to wait quite a bit until the paper is published, sometimes many months, because of this process. To reject is usually quite quicker, but to accept takes more time, because of the revision and re-revisions, and it has to be sent to the reviewers again and come back. So there's a selection of the good articles to the leading journals, but even there you see sometimes articles that somehow passed the obstacles and got published, you can say by chance. Sometimes it's really by chance, because you send an article to 2, maybe 3 reviewers, and out of a list of hundreds. So there's a lot of, it's not very objective. There are some criteria to use, and as I showed, there are some ways to do a good peer review, but it's not always done. So we see, I think eventually we see more articles that are of less importance. People are stressing their using a lot of statistics. Of course, it's mandatory to use the statistics, and many times the result is statistical but less clinical, with less clinical importance. So good questions, which I don't have a very strict answer for that, but we see a lot of, the spectrum is very wide.
Yeah, thank you. Just for our junior doctors' information, tell me if I'm wrong, but all of the work that you do and the work that's done by members of the editorial board and the editor, this is work done in a honorary capacity, right? You're not being paid. I know reviewers don't
Yeah.
get paid.
No, it's you can say honorary. Yeah.
Honorary, yeah. So the next question for me is that there are some people who seem to think that the first publication in a specific journal, like say the World Journal of Surgery, the British Journal of Surgery, is a bit difficult. But then once you get a paper in, and therefore if you publish before, then the chances of acceptance becomes a little bit higher. Is there any truth in that?
I'm not sure, man. If you're really a leader in the field and you have a lot of papers and they know your name, and maybe it may affect, but it's not that like you did once and then everything will go very smoothly for you and you don't have to work hard. That's not like that.
Yeah.
It's true that if you are leading in this field, you come from a central leading place with a lot of experience, the numbers are bigger, so it's easier for you to publish. But of course, there's a bias here as well. But
Yeah.
it's I can say that it's true psychologically, because once you get over your first paper and you get to know the format, you get to know how it works, then there are some barriers, psychological barriers that may fall, and you can continue to do that. You see, it's not that difficult. It can be done. So
Yeah.
in that aspect, yes. But regarding the acceptance, I'm not sure.
Okay, great. So Dario is asking, what's your opinion about open access journals, and are the processes you presented respected in these open access journals?
I don't like them. Like I said, I don't like it. I never sent to open access. I mean, some of the open access is part of the main journals that
Yeah.
the article is very important. They open that as an open access. That's a completely different thing. But the open access journal are paid journal. You have to pay for publication. And once you put the money in the process, it's not the same process. I mean, it's you get some kind of positive bias into the process, and I think the interest to earn money is I mean, they claim that they are peer reviewed, but I think it was differently. So I don't like to. I never sent to open access journal, and I also don't like to get reviews. When they ask me for review, I just don't accept that. I don't like to cooperate with this, but I know it's there. I mean, it's a huge business, and it will not disappear easily.
Yeah.
Many times, if you think about, if you want to see your name in print, you can do that. But if you want to keep yourself within the quality journal, which also have academic importance, but because eventually, if you publish in open access journals, it will not have a lot of academic. You don't get a lot of academic points for that. Usually, the grading is less. I mean, they can be very popular because they are free, but the academic quality is lower. So you don't gain much from publishing there.
Yeah, thank you. Just one other question from me, and then let's see if anyone else has a question. So is there a lot of pressure, or if there is, how much pressure is there to on the editorial board, on you, on the editor-in-chief, to try and increase the impact factor? And would you then prefer certain types of articles like systematic reviews and meta-analysis because they might be cited more often?
I think it's there. You're right. It happens, and we take that into consideration because the quality of the journal. I mean, it's like feeding itself. So if you get a high impact factor journal, you get more important articles being submitted to that journal. So it's circular, and eventually, it's one of the aims of the journal to increase its impact factor. So and indeed, publishing consensus statements or good
Guidelines.
reviews, which will have large, wide readership. Usually, we tend we love these papers. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It still doesn't mean that we'll accept them without, regardless of the quality. But these are articles that really increase the impact factor. I think they have some kind of preference.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Danny. I really appreciate this. So I don't think there are any further questions.
I would like to ask one.
Yes, go for it.
Very quickly, if that's okay. Now, you mentioned that as an associate editor, you receive quite a lot of papers and you do some sort of first screening in terms of the relevance. How collegial is the decision about what is relevant for your journal? So how often does that get kind of reviewed within you and your colleagues, and how collegial is the decision about what's important and what's not important for your journal?
The triage or the immediate rejection that we do is if we see that it's really unrelated to the topics that the journal deals with. That's easy. We can tell the author, okay, it's not really appropriate for this kind of journal. Find something more specific, but that doesn't happen much. Most of the immediate rejection or immediate selection is done due to really low quality that you really don't want to spend too much effort on your reviewers that send to reviewers that, and it's actually reviewing is a really tough process. I mean, sometimes you can do it quite quickly, but you don't want to send very low quality articles to reviewers who prefer to keep them for the real work. So most of the immediate selection is done based on quality. Low, you see that's really low quality, very low numbers, unrandomized, or very poorly written articles. So we try to keep the triage of these articles to certain minimum, not to give the benefit of doubt of peer review to most of the articles.
Lovely, great, thank you. Right, so thank you very much, Danny. Again, it's beyond 11 o'clock for you, so appreciate your time. So
thank you for the invitation. It was very, very nice. I really appreciate your your system, and it was very nice. Also, the presentation in the beginning, I really enjoyed that. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening. Until next time, keep running your life with our surgical podcast.